for.
That's what this episode's about.
I had that very strong conviction that that was the right path to follow.
So what you're doing is you're overriding your nervous system. You're building up strength to your nervous system.
And I think even if at the moment you are not, you can decide to be what you are.
All right, TBM Legion, guys and girls. It's another episode of the TBM broadcast, Tools for High Performance and Human Fortitude. We've got a special guest today, Michael Sea Bass Shipman, one of the top middleweight MMA professionals in the country right now, renowned for his explosive, ferocious finishes and all sorts of other shenanigans. So welcome, Mike. Welcome, Gaz.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a couple of years.
It's been a while.
We do actually know each other in the real world, not just the digital interface here. We've got lots of catching up to do, which is awesome. Really happy to have you on. Why don't you start by giving us a quick snapshot, Mike, of your athletic background and what's led you into MMA and what you're doing now?
I guess I've always kind of been drawn to combat and fighting. Always wanted to be the toughest kid on the playground. So I've just been doing strength training from a very young age, just kind of press ups and like watching World's Strongest Man, and then like trying to find stuff in the garden I can lift up. Played rugby for quite a while. Played rugby from probably the age of kind of 10 to 20. And in that time as well, I'd also kind of dabbled in judo and boxing. And I always kind of knew once I left home, I'd be doing the MMA because my parents weren't super keen on it at the start. So I kind of always had in the back of my head, I have a crack at this rugby, but I always knew that I was going to end up fighting. So played a bit rugby. Got a bit frustrated with my progress there, and kind of realized that I didn't really love it enough, especially when I started doing MMA. I went into it thinking I'll be fine because I'm a strong guy and I've had a few fights, and I went into it and was just massively out of my depth in London Shoot Fighters right away, but just loved it and like was interested in every little aspect of it, like the stuff I was bad at as well. Whereas in rugby, I like the bit where I was smashing into people and being physical, but all the drills and stuff really, really bored me. And I just realized in MMA there's none of that. There was no part that felt like work. That was boring. So even when I was getting smoked by everybody, there was a couple of times where I was like, "Wow, man, am I ever going to be? Is this for me?" But our coach Alexa says, like a man who loves what he's doing is very hard to beat. And I just kept doing it and got better.
That's awesome. It's really funny because I've only known you as Mike Shipman. Yeah, I've only known you in the last couple of years when you've obviously been pretty much at the top of your sort of game. And so it's really difficult to imagine you as the noob in Shoot Fighters getting smoked by people. that visualization doesn't really compute in my head.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and it's like it's always like no one gets an easy time when you kind of when you go there, you're gonna get tested as an outsider. Like there's all the kind of stories flying around about stuff, but it's not like people seem to have an idea that you're going to go to Shoot Fighters and you're going to get like Shark Tanked and it's going to be unfair, and then you're going to get one guy after another. You're not going to get recovery time. Whenever they're sparring from outside, they dictate the rounds. You do as many rounds as you want, like take a break, whatever. But it's just hard rounds. It's not playing around. But I came in there with a kind of thinking, I'm a tough, strong guy, and then just there's just this proper professionals, and then that's kind of the wake up call of like, oh wow, this is what I need to. There's kind of two things that happen when people get that kind of wake up call. It's either they're like, yeah, I'm gonna keep away from that and kind of look after my ego, I guess, or it's kind of, oh, this is where I need to be. I can obviously, if all these guys are able to do something, there's no reason if I stick around, I'm not going to be able to do what they can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, amazing. So I guess just to bring people up to speed, for anyone who's not familiar with the UK MMA scene right now, you've got a record of 14 wins, 3 losses.
That's correct,
right?
yeah.
You started to make a bit of a name for yourself for quite quick finishes as well. You've had quite a few first round fights, haven't you? And some really quick knockouts.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, go on. I was trying to think how many first. I think
it's 10.
10 first round finishes. Okay, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Well.
And yeah, so yeah, obviously you're one of the top guys. You were the BAMMA middleweight world champion. Is that the last title that you held?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. So you've obviously had a pretty decent professional career already, but you were talking then about how, you love what you do. You essentially came across the rugby because even though you were doing well at that and you enjoyed that, there's absolutely nothing about MMA that you don't enjoy. But has there been any part of your professional career where that's not been the case, where maybe your motivations for fighting have changed?
Well, yeah, I guess it was 2019. 2019 was a bit of a rough one for me. So I lost my, interestingly, I lost my pro debut. So I had a couple of amateur fights. I lost my pro debut, and that completely, like I said, when I came to shoot fighters and I got like twisted up a few times, that gave me an ego check, because before that I was kind of always thought, I had this kind of feeling of invincibility. I thought I was something special or something else. I thought that when it came to it, I would just have anybody up when it came down to it. And then I had a little ego check in the gym, but again, like, that's against really high level guys, and it's in the gym, and then I could still have that little thing in the back of my head, but like, yeah, if it comes to it though, I've got this bomb, and like I'd find a way to win. So that's allowed to kind of survive in the back of your head, even when the evidence is kind of to the contrary. But then when I lost my pro debut to a guy who just, not really, nothing special, just kind of, just wasn't really, shouldn't have been that level. And yeah, it just came undone, and it came unstuck there. And then I couldn't have that just completely twisted it twisted my world upside down, because then that there was that real cognitive dissonance, because then I didn't have that part of my head where I had the little in the back of my head being like, oh yeah, but if it came to a fight, I'd win. That was like, well, you were in a fight and you didn't, so what's up? So I was like, okay, so if I'm not that guy, if I'm not that invincible person that I thought I was, and that was my view of myself for almost all of my life, if that's not who I am, then what am I? And like, I had a real kind of had to really kind of dig into that, and ended up being just personally one of the most important things that's ever happened to me, probably. And so that was a real kind of that. It was an incredibly painful process, but that was a really important part of my life. And then I went on this 13 fight winning streak. And then I got around to 2019, and just the wheels started falling off a little bit. I was as you two, when you two met me, as you knew me, I was living in a van outside the gym, and that's all I was doing. And then it really didn't matter, whether I had money on it, because my only expenses was fuel and food, and I did what I loved every day, just training. It's not expensive. And then all of a sudden, I've had my first kid now. I've moved into a house, and now I've got all these kind of responsibilities kind of piling on. And I guess that took some adjusting to. And then also, I just wasn't taking proper care of my health and my recovery and my eating. And I was getting repeatedly sick in 2019. I got injured and was sick as well. I had to pull out of one fight. Just about got to another fight, and I just wasn't performing how I wanted to. So I lost my first fight since that 13 fight win streak against a good guy got a TKO stoppage on me, and that was like that was another kind of a gut check, not as extreme as the first one because I'd felt it before, but it just kind of made me kind of assess kind of what am I doing, why aren't I recovering as well as I should be, what's going on with my mind frame, and then I had that next fight with Fabian, who I've had a bit of like a kind of like a 2-year kind of back and forth with this next guy, and then I thought I'd done enough to eke out a decision win against him, and I lost the decision. And after that fight, the first one I lost, I went in and I did the best with what I had at the time with the camp with how I felt at the time. I felt I did the best of what I did at the time. There was stuff I could have done better in the camp, and I learned from that, but I could live with that. I went in there, did my best, and went out on my shield, and I wasn't good enough that night. With Fabian, I just felt I had his number, I could beat him, and then I wasn't in the fight. I was thinking about the outcome. I was thinking, I don't like this guy. I want to hand him his first loss. I don't care if it's ugly or I'll eke out a decision. I'll play it safe. And that was just that was a disrespect to the process. I wasn't enjoying being in there in the fight, and that was what was reminiscent of my first loss, my very first loss. I wasn't enjoying being present in the fight, and I was just thinking, I got to get this guy polished off, get him out of the way, and then I can move on to the next thing. I was already thinking like in the future. And after that loss, I was like, well, what do I even do this for if not to enjoy the fight? If I'm thinking about future wars, like if I'm not present in the moment enjoying the fight, what's the point? There's better ways to spend your time and to make money. And then this was like kind of, I had to learn that lesson again, obviously, because I allowed outside influences, like not liking the guy, thinking that was the last fight of my contract, thinking about I got to get this win, so I re-sign on a good contract, get back on a win streak. All these external influences, which don't really have anything to do with a fight, that became my priority, as opposed to being present in the fight and giving it the respect it's due. And because I tried to do that, I tried to get the superficial rewards. I lost the superficial rewards, and I missed out the main prize of fighting, which is being in the fight and really enjoying and experiencing it. So that again was kind of like a reset. Like it's a lesson that I'd already learned once, and I had to learn it again. It's and it it was a bit of a rough one. I didn't give the fight I didn't pay it its dues, and the gods of combat punished me by by a decision that you can agree with or disagree with, but at the end of the day, I left it too close, and I had an opportunity to smash up a guy's face who I didn't like, and I sold out that opportunity to try and get a safe win. So that sat poorly with me. That I didn't set well with me. So I had to that's again, I had to remind myself, why do I do this? Why am I fighting? Like, because I love to fight. All this other stuff, all this kind of like, all the circus around it, that's extras. Like the money and the kind of like being able to make a life out of it and stuff. That's extras. Like I wouldn't have dreamed to be in this position like 10 years ago. So I've already, so I mean, it's like it's greedy of me to ask for more. Now it's time to just enjoy what I'm doing. And so I've been rambling for a while, but like it's kind of and the thing is as well, like I hit 30 and I'm like, one of these times this is going to be my last fight. And you can always say, oh, but next time I'm going to make it better. I'm really going to enjoy that fight. I'm going to do all the things I wanted to do next time. But one time there's not going to be a next time. So you better make it this time. You better make sure you enjoy it. You're present in that moment, and you get out of your system while you can, because like you see so many fighters, they get to the end of their careers and they haven't got out of their system. They're still trying to chase more. So I'm just kind of very conscious of that. I've stopped talking now. That's like 10 minutes solid ramble. Sorry, man. Yeah.
No, it was perfect, mate. You answered the question incredibly well. I
Can't even remember the question.
Me neither. No one can.
Yeah.
It was so long ago. No, but that's fine. I feel like Gaz has got something he probably wants to
it's
add to that.
a relatable story for so many people. Like just all those, I've got so many things to say. Just all those elements, like just that idea of holding it together. But that's something that's because of what you last came to mind really strongly. And sorry to like make it all about me, but one of the last guys I fought was a guy called Darren Geisha. And looking back, it's taken years. I actually feel bad. Like if I ever met him, I'd probably apologize because I didn't behave very well after the fight. Like he came to speak to me and congratulate me, and I kind of just jogged him on. And so like the reasons for that, I was relating to like at that stage, I was just into the game. I was living at London Shoot. Everything was about combat sports. Didn't have a pot to piss in, you know, so everything was about that. Hardly any friends in contact, no chance of like a girlfriend or going out the weekends or anything like that. Nothing normal. I was a complete savage, like an actual savage. It took me years to realize I'm being around normal people. Like, holy shit, it's taken me years to start being just a normal member of society again. And so anyway, the point I was getting to, why I was so pissed off with him was one at the weigh-ins, he was only 200 grams over. And they asked me if I was going to let it go. And I was like, no. You know,
Sweat, man. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And I'm taller than him. He can, you know, this is how my mind was working.
Yeah.
So already I was angry at him, and not like personally, but professionally. I was like, ugh! And then during the fight, and I don't want to like make him sound bad, but put shame on him. But I really wanted to showcase my skills, and I wanted to either knock him out or submit him. I wanted to show my quality. And while I was ground and pounding him, he tapped out. While I was and I was so upset that I felt like I didn't get to, you know, I've been living at London Shoot. I got injured. I busted a hand. I popped a rib, and then now this is me showcasing my stuff to the world. And here you are, not bringing your best, and you've denied me. You know, I was so angry. So when he came up, like afterwards, I think I was talking to my coaches and a couple of friends afterwards, and like, you know, sort of living up the glory. He came over to like shake hands. I was like, oh yeah, all right. And I just kind of like jogged him on because I didn't want to insult him or anything like that, but I just didn't want him to be around me.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. 100%. Yeah.
Like you've denied me something. Like you're actually good. You're better than you gave me, Darren. I'm pissed off with you.
Yeah, and I've done this whole camp. And how many times do I get to do this? Like I've done it every time you do a camp. It takes a bit. It takes its toll. So you've paid a price with your time and your body, and you feel like and you know if the guy's done, he's done. But like you saw something. You saw he had more. And I get that's frustrating. And like and as you know, you've only got so many in you, and you've so many of these camps in you. And this was an opportunity to do something beautiful that he took away. That he felt. I get it. Like I 100%. I get it.
I mean, you never know what the guy was going through. You
know? Yeah. Of course. But again, that like
I know it could have fractured an orbit or something, and it was just tough and never admit that. Well, I don't know. You know, like you never actually know. Everyone's got real reasons. Like with time security now, you know, who knows what he was going through? You know? Yeah.
But like as you said, you're a savage. You're doing your thing day and day, and like. That's not your problem. You're in there together on the day, and you know it's you're there. So do it right.
Yeah. Something you said that was interesting, I think, Mike, when you were talking about your fight with Fabian, because I know that there was a bit of a build up to that fight, based on the idea that you two didn't really like each other. I'm not really sure if anyone really likes him. But it was the first time that I kind of seen you with that kind of mindset. I mean, obviously, you know, not all your fights have been really well publicized and a big build up to them and stuff anyway. But one thing that always struck me about you, even when I've seen you on your finishes where you've knocked somebody out, where it's been a very explosive finish, you've always got a real profound sense of composure about you. Do you feel like you kind of touched on it there, but you didn't really go into the details? Do you feel like that's part of what let you down in that fight, was not having that same composure, or just a different mindset?
I felt, to be fair, I felt composed. Like I felt like I was there and I was seeing everything, but it's just I think my my motivations were mixed up. I had, like I said, it's not like I'd lost my cool and I was throwing out, but my motivation was messed up. I was so focused on winning, on making him lose more specifically, that I became too fixated on the outcome, as opposed to the process, as opposed to how he gets the outcome. Again, like I said, that's the thing I did with the first fight, that first loss. I got so obsessed with the outcome. I should be a UFC Bellator caliber fighter. That's the idea I had myself. So I should polish this guy off like that, move on to the next one, not even celebrate it, shouldn't even enjoy it. I shouldn't be celebrating beating a guy like this. And that's kind of the mind frame. And then I forgot to enjoy the fight, because I was already envisioning myself years from now. So of course I should win this fight easily. So of course, so what that does is it robs you of your enjoyment of the fight itself. It robs you of your enjoyment of the win, because of course I should win. And it adds a whole load of pressure. And yeah, the mistake with Fabian is I don't. It's not like I lost my cool. Like I was there, I was composed, and but my decision making was affected by my goal of just too fixated on the outcome. And yeah, that I guess that is because I had taken it personally. So yeah, in a way that did affect it. So yeah, that for sure is a lesson. I fight because I love fighting. I don't fight because I want to beat this guy up or that guy up, or I want to be this, I want to be like the big I am or whatever. I in the core of me, I love combat. I love being in a fight, and I forsook that for the fake stuff, for the I want to see this guy. I want to hand him his first loss. I want him to have to think about me. I want him to just. I want to give him a reality shift, a perspective shift. I want to teach him a lesson. It's not my business. It's not my business. His personal development isn't my business.
Some might say that you really lost to your ego.
Yeah, well, I lost to the judges as well. That's the thing. Like if I fought my best fight and sorry, I fell up. If I fought my best fight and I lost when given my best, that's, you can live with that. But I sold myself short there. That's what was most frustrating about it. And I guess that is because that probably is that's probably the first fight I have really felt like personally like fuck this guy. But that's a learning curve.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So one of the things I find really interesting about you as well, as people are probably starting to get an idea of, you're quite a philosophical guy. You're actually educated in philosophy, aren't you? Is it a degree you've got? Or,
no, absolutely not.
That's really?
Yeah, that's the funny thing is I did this documentary thing, and it goes back to what we're saying about the kind of identities we build for ourselves and whatnot. Because I went to Oxford Brookes University for like a term to study Japanese and philosophy, and I dropped out real quick. Like education wasn't really my thing. Like I'm really interested in philosophy and I like reading about it in my own time and all that. But I got there and then there's all these like other courses you've got to do. So I wanted to learn a bit of Japanese and do a bit of philosophy, because already my plan ticking around was like, okay, so if I'm like a big jacked white guy who can fight and speak Japanese, I'm gonna make money in Japan. Like, there's no way I don't get like a TV show in Japan.
It's just common sense.
Yeah, of course. And then yeah, so that was kind of thing. I was already thinking about fighting there.
How's that panning out?
I've got I keep intermittently over the past 10 years. I've been downloading Duolingo, doing 2 weeks of Japanese, and then falling off. But I'll get there eventually. But yeah, I never actually even got round to doing like. There's all this other stuff you got to do. I don't know if like how uni works, but like you get there and you've got to do all these other courses to get your credits that had nothing to do with what I wanted to study. And I was like, this is bullshit. And like, I dropped out pretty quick, like before Christmas. But it's funny though, because they're doing this documentary, and like people like people to behave a certain, like that you like to be able to identify. Like that's the thing, of the mistake I made of myself. I wanted to identify myself as a certain thing. I am unbeatable fighter, so I do this. So I have this idea of who I should be, and this is how I should behave. So that ends up putting loads of pressure on me to behave and perform in a certain way. So I'll go to fights, and there's a little bit in the back of your head that's like that. I think that knows it's bullshit. That's not really who you are. These ideas, it's not really who you are, but it's scared of that being exposed. So it knows that you can be exposed. It knows that if I go into this fight and I don't perform how the idea of me should perform, then I have to reassess. Like I have to reassess that image, that self-image, and I think that's what the scary thing is. But when you kind of realize that identity, it's useful for functioning in society. Like oh, he's a doctor, so he does this, or he's a builder, so I'll get him to build my house. He's a Christian, he's a Muslim. Like everyone's kind of, you put everyone into kind of these boxes, and it's useful for predicting behavior. But if you take it too seriously for yourself, and you too closely identify with that, then I think that's a recipe. That's a bit of a mistake, because then you inhibit yourself from behaving naturally in a situation. There's a filter first. Something happens, and then you think, how would this image I've created, how would they react to this situation, instead of just reacting naturally? And I think that's where a lot of pressure comes in a fight. Whereas like you hear people like Tyson Fury say, a really interesting guy, like you hear so many fighters like they'll say, like they'll go into fight and they'll be like, they'll say the things they think a fighter's meant to say. Like they'll never comprehend, like never consider the possibility that they might lose. Like that's incomprehensible. Like that can't happen. Obviously that's a possibility, but they have to pretend, because they're such an alpha fighter and they're so confident, they have to pretend it's not even occurred to them. It's occurred to everybody. That possibility has occurred to everybody, but they end up lying to themselves because they're trying to live up to that image. I feel anyway. Whereas you hear Tyson Fury when he goes into a fight, and this kind of struck me, and he's like, well, like I'm gonna smash this guy up. I'm gonna go in and smash this guy up, and if he beats me, then I guess I'm not as good as I thought I was. And it's like, yeah, that of course that takes a whole load of pressure off. You're not trying to. He's not trying to. He's like, I think I'm this good. If I'm proven wrong, then I'm proven wrong. He's got I think that's a real kind of like, that's a real healthy and advantageous way to look at it, because it takes a whole load of pressure off. It allows you to perform. You're not trying to live up to an image you have of yourself. I think I can do this, and if not, then I guess I was wrong. Like it's not acquiescing defeat. It's not like you're not going to try your hardest, but it's just being bluntly honest. Which I think is a useful thing. And again, I've gone off on a tangent and I've forgotten your original question.
I think that's quite enlightening. It takes away a certain, almost like a pettiness, because there's two battles between two athletes. There's one who's actually better at the game, and two whose ego doesn't want them to be seen to be beaten and be better at the game, especially in combat sports. Like Alexis, our coach, said this to me once. It's like, stop saying it's not personal. When everyone punches you in the face, it's always personal. It's always a little bit personal.
Yeah.
So especially in combat sports, there's almost like that battle of wills. It almost becomes a sort of I'm a superior being than you. You can't beat me. I'll beat you. And then that's when the bad sports come out with all the excuses and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it almost eliminates that whole battle. So now it's just who's the better athlete, who is the better athlete in an almost
Well, that's the thing.
objective.
And also, yeah, sorry, but yeah, and also it accepts that battle is part of the battle, because you hear what a lot of people say who underperform, or in quotations, underperform on the night, and they're like, yeah, well, I've got all the talent, all the stuff, but just I can't get it together on the night, and like they feel like they're selling themselves short because they're unable to perform on the night, and they have all this pressure of, I know I'm that good, but I can't get it together in front of a crowd, so I'm selling myself short. I'm not doing myself justice, which puts a lot of pressure on, which ironically, that pressure is what makes them sell themselves short. When really, when you look at it honestly, like you said, there's two battles. There's more than one battle going on. There's who's technically the better fighter, and also the other one, who can deal with that pressure. That's part of what makes you a good fighter. So when you realize that there's no way you can sell yourself short. You are what you are. You go out and you perform, and that takes a load of pressure off. Because I know I felt it before as well. It's like I've done all this work and all these things. I need to show people how good I am. Your ability to perform under that pressure is part of the thing. That's like saying, oh, I would be a really good fighter if only I had better cardio, or I would be a good fighter if only I was better at fighting. That's a massive part of it. So it's not like, oh, it's unfair, I'm better than him, but no, you might be technically better than him in the gym, but if he can hold his shit together better on fight night and smash you up, he's the better fighter. Like, they're not separate things. And I think the mistake is people say, no, I'm the better fighter, I should have won. There's no should have. There is what happened, and that's all there is. You didn't win. That means you weren't good at him that night. That's not to say you can't change it, and that's not to say that shouldn't put a fire under you. You shouldn't work at it, but be honest with yourself. Like, if you had, there's even more shame then, because you had all these gifts that it was all stacked in your favor, and you still couldn't make it work. That makes him the better fighter. If he managed to make it work on that night, he is the better fighter. So that guy who beat me on that thing, on my pro debut, I could run that fight back 100 times, and I'm gonna beat him. But that's irrelevant. That night, he's the better fighter. He pulled out. He was better than me, and I can make all the excuses and be like, oh, I could do this and that, and I beat these guys in sparring. Doesn't matter. And then when you realize that, I think that's a bit of a liberation. And it's interesting. You see how many top level athletes, they're disproportionately people of faith at the top level. And I was kind of thinking, I'm not personally, I don't subscribe to any particular religion, but I was kind of thinking, like, why is that? Why so many sprinters like kissing the cross, or so many fighters giving thanks to God and stuff? And what I've kind of come down to is it allows them to get out of their own way. It allows them to take a load of weight off their shoulders. They're like, whatever happens is what's meant to happen. That's God's will. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do my thing. And it allows them to perform unencumbered by that pressure of, I could make a mistake, because they've realized in a roundabout way, not necessarily the same way I've got there, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. They've realized there isn't a mistake. There are no mistakes to be made. Whatever happens is what's meant to happen. Either you're good enough or you're not. And once you realize that you can't have an unjust decision, then you're just like, oh, you don't have to worry anymore. I'm either going to win, or I'm going to lose. I'm going to do my absolute best. I'll die in there to win, but it's not going to be unjust. It's not going to be, oh, it should have gone the other way. No, there is no should. There's what happens and what doesn't happen. And for me, that allows unencumbered performance, and it allows you to enjoy the performance as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, when you take that more rational approach to it, there's quite a few benefits for your mindset from that. You're basically you're managing your insecurities better when you think about it that way, because your biggest insecurity as a fighter when you're going to step into the cage is obviously that loss. But if you can rationalize it both ways, I mean, I talk about this in coaching with clients about, mitigating anxiety and dealing with stress, like rationalizing best and worst case scenarios. What is it you're really afraid of? You know, a lot of the time when we get stressed and anxious about certain things, it's because that insecurity is there, but we refuse to face it. It's lurking in the background. Mm-hmm. And it's when we don't face up to our fears that they become a real problem.
Yeah.
So,
100%. And that's not to say don't care about losing or like that it's not going to hurt or that it doesn't matter, because that's another trick that people play on themselves. They like that. No disrespect to your mate, the opponent, but that's probably part of what pissed you off, is that he tapped out without giving his best fight, and then he came up to you afterwards and was like, "Oh, cool," like it didn't matter. And it's like, it fucking does matter. It 100% it matters, and it's meant to hurt. And the fact that you're kind of cheery afterwards, that pisses me off, because I know that you're acting like you don't. It's kind of a rationalization to self-protection, but it doesn't. It doesn't matter. You win some, you lose some. That's again, that's the self-protection. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's not kind of the honesty. You win some, you lose some. It fucking sucks to lose, and it hurts, but it's not unjust. If you lose, you know, there's something you can do about it. It's not like I was unlucky, or is that no, you lost. And it's interesting what you said about the kind of rationalizing it, because you look at kind of like the kind of Stoic philosophy. It's kind of another way. That's why I said, like, the kind of the Christian route or the organized religion route of getting there is not my way of getting there, but it gets to the same place. And you can see kind of like the Stoics, another way of getting to the same place is that they break stuff down into what's that? Things that are fully within your control, things that are somewhat within your control, and things that are outside your control. And they say, do not worry about those things that are outside your control, because what's the point? Don't even worry about the things that aren't fully within your control, because you can put all that effort into it and all that stuff, and you'll still be hurt and disappointed sometimes, because you do what you can, but it's not fully within your control. The outcome of a fight, as much as confident and as well trained as you want to sound, the outcome of a fight, it's not fully within your control. Unless you're fighting an infant or some idiot who really doesn't know what they're doing, the outcome of a fight isn't fully within your control. What is fully within your control is the process, what I'm doing, putting my game on and enjoying myself and being present in the moment. So yeah, by getting too obsessed with the outcome of the fight and like, am I going to represent myself fairly? Am I going to give myself a good showing and all this stuff? By obsessing over that, you're fixating on something that's not fully within your control. And like the Stoics say, that's always going to walk hand in hand with anxiety, because there's a part of you, no matter how much you try to trick yourself, there's a part of you that knows it's not fully within control. So this part of you knows that you can come undone. Whereas if you just focus on the stuff that is fully within control, my preparation, what I'm going to do when I'm out there, like watching, being present, living in that moment and enjoying the fight, that's something that I can do regardless of my opponent. And that's going to mean that I'm going to perform better but when it comes to it. Yeah.
And that goes hand in hand with religion as well. You know, it's about managing expectations. So much of religion is about accepting the outcome both ways. So yeah, that's awesome, mate.
Sorry. My toilet reading at the moment, Epictetus. It was a Stoic philosopher. Puts it as there's every situation has two handles, one by which you can grasp it and one by which you cannot. So if your situation leads you to say, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim, you can't carry the situation by that handle. But when you look at what is within your power, i.e. the process that you've just talked about, then you can carry the situation. And that's your only chance of getting somewhere. You know, you can't hold it the other way. There's no chance anywhere trying to hold it the other way.
Yeah, and just going back, I just remember that's the thing that Max said earlier about acknowledging the fear as well. I think that's also that's as much as an important thing as well, because like you said, like you have to acknowledge that there's that part that's outside of your control. So you stop trying to control it, and you deal with the stuff you can. That's very matter of fact, Stoic. what can I actually do about this situation? But if you're not honest with yourself, and you don't even like, and this is kind of a mistake I find with fighters as well, then you're not honest with yourself. If you don't acknowledge the fear and the mistake you're making, then how can you correct it? And if you don't acknowledge that there's fear, then you can't look and examine why it is, where it's coming from. And the kind of the way I like to think of it is as well is, if I acknowledge my fear and I open up the front door and I welcome it in, then I know which way it's coming from. If I shut the door on fear and I pretend it's not there, it's going to sneak in through a side window and it's going to fuck me. And like you said, like, you're not going to, with that story about the handle you can take, like, you're not going to even get to that point if you don't admit that there's a handle outside. You're going to keep on making the same mistake, keep grasping at it, and you're going to keep getting nailed by the same problem. And more often than not, what people do, in my experience, is when that we're going back to that self-image they have of themselves, when they'll come in and you see them come into the gym, or they go into a fight, or whatever happens, when that gets upset, when that self-image gets upset and they get that cognitive dissonance, then there's kind of two choices. Either you reevaluate your self-image, and it's a painful process, but it's a healthy one. I kind of think like braces on your teeth. It's pulling your teeth into line. It hurts, but it's a worthwhile. Either you do that, or you make the excuses and you deny it, and you protect your self-image that way. You kind of wrap it in cotton wool. Oh, well, this happened. It was lucky. He landed a lucky punch. But the problem with doing that is that little thing in the back of your head that knows it's bullshit, that's not going to allow you to risk it again. And so that's why you see people, they don't go back and they don't fight again, because their ego can just about survive that catastrophic loss with all these excuses. But if they go out and they do it again and they lose again, they can't afford that risk, because then the ego has to be like, oh man, like.
Well, that's the difference in my mind between winners and losers. Like, in sports, there is something called attribution theory. So it's not just a question of, oh, I lost, I wasn't good enough. It's that fine line between what you're talking about, between ego, and then there could be a lot of actual truth to say, you're technically brilliant, you've got knockout power, but your conditioning sucks.
Yeah. And
sometimes there is an attribution where you say, do you know what, if you were conditioned in future, you'd be a fucking champ. So like, there is that fine line between knowing what's an excuse and what's actually real.
100%, yeah.
Somebody for me who embodied that was, I don't know if you were watching that much MMA at this time, but during the Pride era, Sakuraba was awesome and would also go through massive losing streaks. So like, you know, in 1 minute, he'd literally pull off like Henzo and Hoyler Gracie's arm, and then he'd get his face stamped by Vanderlei Silva. And then he'd come back and he'd beat somebody, or lose about 5 in a row, and then come back and beat somebody. But in every single fight that he lost, he'd do something great. Like, he'd almost submit them, or he'd like drop somebody. There'd be a flash knockdown. And for my mind, people would be like, oh, Sakuraba's washed up. He's washed up. And I'd be like, I don't really think he is yet. Like he's still so dangerous. He's still so dangerous. And he was that guy that went away and didn't work on himself, or just didn't have his ego in check. He wouldn't have come back and made the comebacks that you know, like it's so hard to know. And I think that's where just having great coaches that can give you honest appraisals come down. I mean, a lot of it's in you, but a lot of it is, you know, with the feedback you're getting around you, because I don't think any one person cannot truly be unbiased about oneself. I think
100%,
I think you've got to have coaches around you that you trust, and that can, you have to trust them to have self-discipline.
100%.
You need that honest appraisal, don't you? We talked about it before.
Well, another really interesting thing that you said is about you said that fine line of like, oh yeah, well, I wasn't good enough. Like, again, for me, that's not what I'm trying to get. That is again a cop out. That's oh well, I'm not good enough. That's not true either. That's also a half truth that you can use to make yourself feel better. Oh, I wasn't good enough, so you know, what could I have done? But like you said, you weren't good enough. What could you do? It's all within your power. Oh, I need to work on my cardio. You can do that. That's well within your power. Like that is, it's not. This isn't a call for like, for mediocrity or to say like, to say, oh no, you know, you are what you are. It's just a kind of a call for honesty. Like, you weren't good enough. Why weren't you good enough? Because it's absolutely within your power to be good enough. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that on that night, you can't say, oh, I was better than him, but you weren't better than him. If you lost, you weren't better than him. Why? And then kind of that, for me, that's the healthiest, the most useful way to look at it.
You know, what's funny about this is that, you know, this is essentially a conversation about MMA conditioning, but you've basically touched on like many of the main points that I talk about in coaching, which is essentially coming down to, you know, knowing yourself, understanding the difference between what's in your control and what isn't. And I mean, more traditionally, in terms of martial arts, philosophy would have played a much larger part of it than it does within the modern MMA scene now. So what I wanted to ask you is, how much impact do you think it has on your ability as a professional fighter in modern MMA to also have this awareness of, or this approach to sort of philosophical thinking and analyzing yourself and being able to sit down and very pragmatically go through, you know, why you lost in the way that you've kind of been describing to us now? And do you notice whether or not other fighters at the top of their game tend to have that kind of philosophical side of things squared away as well?
I'm not sure. It's hard to say because there's so much of it is like how much you really know another person, and so much of it is like kind of bravado, and there's a whole load. I'm not saying this is the only way. There's a whole load of different ways people attain success and get right to the top. But yeah, I've seen it. I feel like I said, you see it in a couple, like I find Tyson Fury an interesting character, and what's more easy for me to see is kind of the people who the pitfalls. I find that easy to pick out. When it's all going well, it's like, oh, why is it going well? Like, I don't know. You can't. The person, maybe they're not going to be honest with you. They're not going to tell you their secret. They're not going to tell you why it's working. But when when it's all going badly for someone, you can kind of see the pitfalls more easily. Like a good example, stigmatized for Deontay Wilder now. The some of the stuff he's been saying after that loss, like it sounds like it's starting to sound a bit nuts. Like some of it, I could be wrong, but it's gone from like, my suit was too heavy, my trainer betrayed me, my trainer poisoned my water, Tyson Fury's gloves were loose, he has egg weights in his gloves, and it's just a whole. And after all that stuff, me hearing all that stuff, that makes me. I feel like he's done now. I don't know. I don't know the man personally, but from what he's saying publicly, to like I don't feel like he's not. I would put money he's not going to come back and he's not going to beat Tyson Fury. Like if you're speaking a different way, I'd be like, oh, okay, like, because then he's actually going to go and he's going to do the work. But now he's got all these things, all these reasons to tell himself why he doesn't have to do the work. All these, and even if he is going and trying to do the work, there's that little thing in his head like, oh well, no, you would have won anyway, so you're good enough already. You're not good enough already, but like you can tell yourself all this mad stuff. So I find it easy to pick out the kind of pitfalls, and like, you know, who am I to say he's been a world champion, all this stuff, but it sounds to me the way he's talking like that's not a healthy way to deal with a loss. It feels like he was blessed with an amazing gift that any fighter would kill for, in that kind of power, and that power's like, that's taken such good care of him, and he had that kind of like on a bigger scale than I had, like, because I was making a pro debut, and that shattered my world when I lost that fight. He was champion of the world. He had every reason to believe that all these ideas he had about himself were absolutely true, and now his world's been tipped upside down. And it's like magnitudes more than what I experienced probably, but like, I feel like he's kind of gone. I feel like it's kind of going the wrong way about it. I could be proven wrong, who knows? But the way he's talking, it sounds kind of nuts. And another one that that when she was on top of the world, Ronda Rousey. You remember when she was on top of the world, she was smoking everyone, like just having a great time, and then she loses her first fight, and it's like, okay, here's the gut check, and then she's just going crying and like talking about killing herself and how no one understands the pressure that's on her, and it's like, you're crazy. So you've smashed how many by that time, 10, 11 girls. You smashed 10, 11 girls, humiliated them in front of the world, and you don't think that they have to deal with that. So it's okay but it's special when it happens to you. Somehow when you lose the fight, it's a special kind of suffering that none of those girls have had to deal with, because the UFC like, that's nuts. That's a crazy, selfish way of looking at it, and it's not an honest, like. And again, it's that thing of like, oh, I deserve more. Like, this should happen. You don't. You deserve exactly what happened. Everyone deserves exactly what happened. And then you see she came back, got smashed again, and then that's it. And I think that, and I don't think it's because she didn't have the. It's not she didn't have the physical capabilities or to make adjustments and to fix her game. It's because she had. I guess it's that kind of that self-image of she's the special one, and she had every reason to believe it. She was the world champion. The UFC was treating her like she was the special one. She was saying all this kind of cool stuff, and when she was winning, yeah, she was really, it's easy to like her, it's easy to get behind, because she was saying all this kind of like, oh yeah, that sounds smart, like saying a lot of cool stuff. But then when it was her turn to get a taste, the way she behaved was nuts, as though like. It's live by the sword, die by the sword. Like, and as much as it stings, like when I've lost a fight or I've got stopped, I have to accept that. Think of the countless people like I've done it to in the gym and the thing, like this is a life I've chosen, and so I can't be a brat if it happens to me. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it happening to me. But if it happens to me, well, like if you're a gunfighter, you might get shot. Like,
Is that a mentality that's evolved since the end of your run? Because you were talking about then, I mean, you mentioned your debut. Obviously, that's quite crushing to lose your debut, especially if you think you're going to win it and you've been doing so well in the gym. But then you went on from there to have a 13-fight winning streak before losing the next one, which in relative terms to you being the center of your universe, that's about the same as being Deontay Wilder, world champion of the world, and then, falling at the hands of Tyson Fury. So, like, is this the mentality you're talking about now? Is this a mentality that's evolved since then, or is this the approach that you had at that time as well?
It's always, I feel it's always evolving, and the interesting thing, I'm sure Gaz will testify to this, like in MMA, like. You learn these lessons, like whether it be to do with life or more specific to combat lessons. You learn a lesson and you think you're sure, I've learned it this time. You think you've learned it, and now I know it, and then you realize you've got to keep learning it again. Sometimes the same lesson in a bunch of different ways. You end up learning the same thing over and over again. I was, I guess, lucky in a way. It's hard to say lucky, but lucky in a way that I had that previous experience to draw on, where that for me it was an earth-shaking event, losing that pro debut, and that kind of that experience made me realize, I've been here before. I know what it's about. I know what to do. I know what the recipe is for this, and I know that this image that creeps in, that image you have of yourself, I know it's bullshit. I know it's not actually real. You're not your record, like that, like particularly combat sports. You're so related and identified to your record. Like you think, like so many people think, I'm the record. I'm that undefeated record. I'm that winning streak. I am. You think you're that record, but luckily I already knew that that's not the case. And like Gaz talking about Sakurab earlier, that guy's got a spotty record, but you're not. Like, how dare you say he's not one of the greats? Like it's because, yeah, he's not. He fought killers. He fought absolute killers. Like I think I was fortunate to already kind of be in a place where I knew that while it's tempting, don't too closely identify with your record or with your results. Once it's done, it's done. Use it for what it's useful for. Learn the lessons you can from it, and then move on. It's painful. It's meant to be painful, but like I said, there's pains that are good pains. There's pains that are making you stronger. And an interesting way of kind of looking at when a sparring goes wrong or something is, I'm not as good as I thought I was before. So say I lost that fight, or that spar went wrong. I'm not as good as I thought I was, but I'm better than I actually was now for having it happen. So whereas my perspective has shifted, shit, I'm not as good as I thought I was. But I'm not as good as I thought I was yesterday, but I'm a little bit better than I was yesterday because of that knowledge. So yeah, you've just got to kind of like, when you really break it down, well, what are you afraid of? Like, it all comes down to pain. You're afraid of the pain of the emotional, whatever. You're afraid of that pain of humiliation. And when you realize like you living like Gaz, like an animal, just in the gym all day, you realize that I know not to fear pain. I've taught myself I don't fear physical pain anymore. I can verse climb till I throw up. I can do this. Like, it's just another manifestation of pain. And I can use it to be stronger.
Yeah. The only thing to fear is fear itself.
Ooh.
I was torn between quotes then, actually.
There's a couple. Give me the other one.
Favorite. Well, my other personal favorite, one of my personal favorites is pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And
that's nice. Yeah, I like that. That's Zen. That's some Zen stuff there.
I can relate to that one a bit more because, unlike the two of you, I've never been a professional fighter, but I learned from my time in the Marines that the only thing that keeps you going when you know that pain is coming, whether you like it or not, is the ability to just rationalize it and dig deep and get on with it. And then it's just a question of mindset. So
and again, not identifying with like not victimizing yourself. Not being like, oh man, I did this stuff yesterday. Nah, what is it? What in this moment right now? What am I dealing with? My legs are sore. I'm tired. Okay. Don't worry about how much more's coming or how much you had before. You can make these narratives. We get too closely attached to these narratives we make for ourselves, and we make them all the time. And you make this narrative of like, oh, my leg's gonna fall off, and then I got all this stuff to do tomorrow, and all that psychic energy you're wasting just kills you. It's like driving with a handbrake on, and it's an absolute waste.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's a phrase that was screamed at me many, many, many times during recruit training mostly, but stop feeling sorry for yourselves. That was basically the mantra of it, because it's true. It's coming, lads. It's going to be shit. We're going out for a week now. It's going to be raining at the start. It's probably going to be still raining at the end. You're going to have no sleep. It's going to be shit. The worst thing you can start to do is victimize yourself in that situation. You start feeling sorry for yourself. You give the control over get the control of the way you feel over to the stuff that's happening, rather than your thought, your filter between those things and how you feel about it. And then you're doomed. From that point onwards, it's hopeless. It's a hopeless battle. So
I'm going to sign out.
All right, Gaz. No worries.
I'll speak to you soon.
Nice one,
See you for part 2. Yeah, it's funny. I was wondering in my head when you were talking about, essentially what we're talking about is, the question I asked you was, do you think like having that kind of rational philosophical approach helps you as a fighter? And I suppose what you've really said in your answer is, it's not necessarily the be all and end all of success, but certainly an inability in that dimension could be the thing that
will cost you.
Yeah.
And in terms of, sorry to interrupt, but because I didn't really answer that question. In terms of, does it help me as a fighter? I think yes. For me personally, I think definitely. It helps my performance. But who's to say? Like, who knows if I was running off ego and anger and rage? Who knows how successful I might be? But what I can speak to is, it allows me to enjoy it. It allows me to enjoy my life and enjoy the process. And I do believe it makes me a better fighter, but also it allows me to really enjoy fighting. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then you're going to smash your body for however many years, and then maybe get some belts. And even if you have all that accomplishment, and then you're going to get to the end and it's going to be like, oh, there's a big empty space of, I was waiting to arrive. And then when I arrived, like, oh, so what? You've got to enjoy it now.
Yeah,
and I think it allows me to do that. Yeah.
I've been reading a book called The Happiness Advantage by a guy called Sean Aker, who's a Stanford professor, and he's basically built a career around teaching people to harness happiness, positive psychology as a tool for success. And in his book, he's talking about, when once a pretty large body of research had been built up on positive psychology, there was a big meta-analysis done of something like over 200 studies. And the conclusion was basically that happiness increases your chances of success across basically every single area, whether it's business, whether it's fitness, whether it's social relationships, whether it's focus, energy, like whatever you're measuring it by, happiness helps. So
believe it, man.
If it's boosting your ability to enjoy the process, then for me, that's hands down, only something that can play in your favor. It makes you wonder as well, like when you think of guys who had unbeaten records like Floyd Mayweather, like I wonder how much of their success was attributed to their egotistical sort of view of things, but that if they'd even just had one loss like halfway through, what the effect of that would be, like
would it have derailed them, or would it have made them
exactly.
Interesting. Like almost like, you can't say it, but like, have you enjoyed the full spectrum of being a fighter until you felt like absolute shit? Like until you question your whole life and be like, oh, why? Like, what am I doing? And then coming back from that is for me, like, I'm not saying like, I'm not recommending it, because like, obviously that's not the object of fighting. But for me, that was that's a huge part of the story for me.
Yeah, but I totally get what you're saying, because, no matter what it is, no matter what path you've chosen through life, like it's still a journey of self-discovery, and you just always, I mean, you're talking about lessons learned in martial arts, but that's the same for life. You go through that process time and time again in life. You think you've learned how to, who you should trust or how to judge someone's character, and then you get screwed by someone again and realize you didn't learn it the first time. You're still learning it every time. It's a repetitive process. And sort of lost my train of thought, actually.
Yeah, but I guess maybe talking about the greats, like, I guess maybe the greats, they were smart enough and reflect enough to learn it in the gym. They didn't have, so maybe they were smart enough that they didn't have to learn it in front of everybody. Like who knows what's thinking in their brain, or who knows what powers them. But I think it's quite possible that, that if you're really smart, if you can really get down into it and really break it down, you don't need to learn those lessons quite so publicly.
Yeah.
But
that's true. Yeah.
So I learn by doing. I'm one of them. So unfortunately, I've had to learn that lesson a couple of times.
And it's not like if you've never lost in the ring that you've never lost. Those guys have probably taken an absolute whooping at 100%. Some point, during training or whatever. So they've still had a taste of it at some point, Yeah,
and then they've responded appropriately, and they didn't have the level of delusion that they needed to clear up by such a public humiliation. Who's to say? Or maybe just like, I think a lot of the time, ego power. It's a powerful fuel, but for me, it's not a sustainable one for me personally. That's like that's running off coal. It's a bit dirty and it's going to run out.
That's a nice analogy.
People are running off, because you see a lot of people running off that anger and that chip on their shoulder and stuff, and it's powerful. But for me, that's for me personally, that's because I felt it at times in training, and it does. It gives you that rage. It gives you a boost. But for me, that's for sprints.
Right.
And in terms of like sustainable longevity, I can't run off hatred. Got to run off love. And that's what works for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's kind of what I was asking you a little bit earlier when I was talking about your composure in the ring and stuff, because you do see guys, when you go to watch MMA live or any kind of fighting, or even like, powerlifting events, strength sports and stuff like that, you see guys getting psyched up before they go, and everyone's got their different routines, and some guys have got their coaches slapping them in the face before they go in there and like whispering shit in their ear and stuff like that. And I'm very much in agreement with you. I think that's all right in the short term, but that's not like sustainable. That's great if you're if you're Eddie the Beast, you're about to walk out and try and pull a deadlift world record, and it's only going to take you a maximum of about 8 seconds, like before you've got it up to your waist. But when you're going into a battle that's potentially going to go on for 3 to 5 rounds, depending, which organization you're fighting under, then yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah, but there's getting like I got no issue with like with getting psyched up and people getting like aggressive and stuff, because you don't know, like we don't know what their inner state is. Like it can be that can still just be love of what you're doing. That can still just be being really into it. But I think the most thing you'll watch out is that kind of, again, it comes from those stories we tell ourselves, in the same way that they're kind of those stories about like you can victimize yourself and things. People can do that with like with a chip on their shoulder, and that rage and that anger can give them a fuel. But it's a volatile one. At least I feel that way, and yeah, it'll run you ragged. It's over a course of years, I would say so. Like you can get success from even over. Yeah, you can get success out of it, but I'm not sure. And also, yeah, who wants to live like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mad pissed off.
It's a bit of a roller coaster ride, that one. And roller coasters are only fun in short bursts, typically speaking. So what I wanted to ask you, because we talked a little bit more probably about your sort of loss than anything else, but obviously you're on a positive. Like now, you just won the last one by decision, which was really awesome to see. And it's funny, like I was genuinely really interested to ask you about your personal experience, because even me, like when you were on that 13 white fight winning streak, from the outside looking in, I was thinking Mike's unstoppable, like nothing's going to derail you at that point. Then obviously 2 losses before you come back onto this win, and you've already talked a little bit about you've obviously analysed why that was. The different things have happened during that period. You've had to adjust to a different lifestyle. But when we're just talking about kind of mindset, was there anything particular that you adopted in order to get you back into that winning mindset to secure that last fight?
Yeah. Again, it was just like relearning that same lesson, kind of in a more kind of nuanced and more detail. That first lesson of I fight because I love it, and also that kind of reminder, like. I'm gonna quote Rocky 3 right now. It's Apollo Creed's training Rocky after he's got smoked by he's got beat up by Clubber Lang, and Apollo's training him, and he's working him hard, and his footwork's all mashed up, and he's not very good. And then Rocky's kind of giving up, and then he goes to walk off, and Apollo goes, "What are you doing, man? Like, get back to it." And then Rocky goes, "Tomorrow." And then Apollo Creed goes, "There is no tomorrow." Screams, "There is no tomorrow" at him. And I was like, man, like, yeah, like what you do, there is no tomorrow. Like what you do now is all you're ever going to do. Like how you supposed, you can all, if you say, tomorrow now, then tomorrow, guess what? You're going to say tomorrow. What you do now in this moment is all you're ever going to do. And that's kind of what that really struck me with fights. And I'm like, even when I was winning that win streak, I was waiting to give myself permission to really let go and enjoy the fights. I'm like, no, I should do this. I should technically do this, secure the win. And then once I get into the wins, and once I get to a big show, then I can let loose and really enjoy myself and kind of take some risks and have fun with the fight. And then like you get to a big show. Well, you've only just got to the big show, so you need to establish yourself, and then you gotta do this and then fight like this, and then play it safe, and then once you're established, so you're not going to get cut for lossing, then you can be. There's always a reason you can kick the ball down the road and kind of and stop yourself from being really present in the fight, because that ego, that image, that identity, whatever you want to call it, that is such a sneaky little thing, and it finds ways to work its way back into your head. And the thing it wants least in the world is for you to be fully present and living life without it, because then you realize it's bullshit. Then you're not feeding it anymore. You're not feeding that fake identity. But it's like is such a sneaky aspect of yourself. It doesn't want that. It wants to be credited with your successes, and it wants you to feel like you need it. And then when you're just fully present and you're unburdened from any kind of identity, when you're living fully in that moment, like you hear people like kind of like achieving a flow state, that's when you're at your optimal performance. And you're not at your optimal performance because you're planning and you're analyzing it, everything in that conscious way that you think you are. Like the idea of you, it's because you're trusting yourself, you're trusting your processes, and your brain and your training. And it's not an unintelligent thing. No. It's just it's very intelligent. It's taking in so much and it's analyzing so much, but it doesn't require the constant narrator. The narrator inside your head, that talking, it convinces you that that's what you are, and it doesn't want you to have success without it, because then you realize it's bullshit, and you realize you don't need it. So yeah, like I said, you always have it'll always give you a reason. No, listen to me now. We'll do this game plan and we'll do that, and then you next fight you can do it. There is no next fight. What I'm doing in this fight is what I'm always going to do. And then just, I guess, kind of like having to realize that again, and realizing like I'm 30 now. You know, I could get a mad injury at any point. It could all be done, or like, and best case scenario, you know, I've got about a decade left anyway. Like, it's probably gonna be less. So I better squeeze every bit of fun and enjoyment and stuff out of this while I can. I better blow the wheels off this thing. I better really kind of like really be present. And that's kind of the thing I went in with that fight. I was a bit frustrated. Kind of, I had a small break in my foot, so I couldn't move quite how I wanted to. So in terms of like my physical performance, I couldn't quite do what I wanted to really put it on him and pressure him and get the finish. But what I was happy with is that I saw everything. I was present in the fight and I was enjoying myself in the fight. In terms of that, in terms of mindset, like I couldn't do anything about my foot at the time. In the time it was there, I just had to get on with it. But in terms of what I could do, like talking about like stoicism again, the stuff that was within my control, I was very happy with.
Awesome.
And that was one of the few. I always, like, a lot of time when you come into a fight, you always like dream about fights, and you dream about like, oh, you wake up and thinking, oh, did I lose? Oh no, it's just a dream. Or you wake up being like, oh yeah, I won the fight. Oh great. Oh no, it was just a dream. Yeah, I always dream, and the outcome. This is the first time I had a dream, and I dreamt about having a great fight, and just like in the build up, I dreamt about having an awesome fight, and you know, I was really testing myself, and then I woke up and I realized that I didn't dream the result, and that's the first time that's happened, and I was like, that's pretty cool. I don't exactly know what that means, but it's pretty cool. Like, so I think that's not to say that, you know, the result doesn't matter or not to care about it, because that's a cop out as well. It's just to say the real thing is the process, is being in the fight, it's enjoying the fight, and it's I love it, mate.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. It's just more of a entire mindset shift really than anything kind of any specific, you know, mindset conditioning strategy, which is again, it's all part of the journey, isn't it? Like you said, you know, sometimes you have to taste that bitter defeat, or that whatever the shittest case scenario is of whatever you're doing, in order to progress to that next step, or to, you know, to place enough value on whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like that first loss, that was kind of like that was the first download, that was the first kind of shift, and then obviously when you're winning, it's easy to when everything, like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, and then I obviously needed to and with that kind of shift in my my circumstances, I needed to like kind of analyze myself again, remind myself why I'm doing it.
Good stuff, man. Cool. So we talked quite extensively about the sort of philosophical side of it and the mental conditioning side of it, I suppose. But I also wanted to talk to you about the more obvious stuff. Like you already mentioned recovery earlier when you were talking about how you'd gone from living in the van outside the gym and, you know, having that lifestyle, and then when that came to an end and you obviously went off to sort of do real life for a bit and get a house and have a baby and all that stuff. You said you weren't really taking care of yourself. Obviously, self-care is massive, isn't it? In any part of high performance sports. You know, when you're, it's funny because you and Gareth, it's a shame he's not here to comment on this now, but you're both kind of unique, or maybe you're not that unique, but you were living in a van outside the gym for all that time, and Gaz was actually living inside the gym, like when he was there. So you've both got this story of both kind of really ingraining yourself into the environment within London Shoot Fighters. And I asked Gaz before in a talk that we just did between us, like how he cultivated his environment for success, and he was saying that he cheated because he just moved into the gym so that nothing else was a factor. You know, so you moved out of the van, you moved into a house, and then you said that you started to your performance started to decline. You weren't really taking care of yourself. So what was happening that was different in that time? Like, which aspects of your recovery were not being catered for?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was getting away with a lot of stuff because I was just living in the van. That's all I had to do. So I'd train, eat, sleep, and I wasn't as most one of the big things was my diet. Was I was eating like clean foods, but my meal timings and size, I was kind of like going for kind of like a bodybuilder approach. I was eating maybe like 6 meals a day, and I was constantly shitting like duck, little quacking it out. Like, it was just what I could, like, I went for years without having a solid shit, and I thought, I guess this is how athletes shit. And then eventually that caught up with me, and I just kept getting infections, and I couldn't fight off these infections. Every time I started pushing myself hard on cardio, I could feel it. I could feel the sickness in me, and then like I would get sick, or I would get like I'd get like a bit of staph or something, and I was just, anything that touched me infected me, and my immune system would just shot. And obviously a lot to do with your gut. So anyway, Marius, Alexis's brother, he's a boxing coach at the gym. He referred me to a guy called Steve Grant, and he kind of was just asking me some questions and kind of really did some blood tests and stuff. And basically, what the conclusion we came to was, I was just in a kind of a constant state of inflammation. So because of the training, the nature of the training, I was just inflamed all the time anyway. And then because of the amount of meal times I was having, my gut was never having a chance to recover. Turns out it needs quite a lot of off time between meals, which to kind of recover and reset. And so I'd be eating literally right before training, so and then be on the mat and then eating again. And so my body just didn't know what was going on. And I developed a leaky gut. And so I had this constant state of inflammation in my digestive system, constant state of inflammation from training, and it was impacting my recovery, impacting my sleep as well. So I was kind of never kind of getting out of the red. And then my body finally got to a point where I would get whenever an infection or a disease came, my inflammatory response just had nothing left to give. It was already maxed out. So that was it. I'd just get sick. So a big thing was kind of adjusting my diet, and just organizing my meal times, fewer meal times, making sure I have a nice long fast in the night. So kind of like a 13-hour window when I go to bed between my dinner and my breakfast. And that immediately started feeling better. So, like, sorry to get crass, but like, rather than like, it was at the point where like, if I was shitting 5 times before 12 o'clock, that's standard. Like, the morning was doing like, and like, so it was getting to that point. But now it's like, and then I'm like, oh, what? You can just shit twice a day? That's amazing. That's like a lot for most people, but for me that was a breakthrough. And then and so my gut started recovering, my inflammation was going down, and then that was kind of like a wake up call to like, I can't just like do my training and go and just slouch in the van now and have the gym right on my doorstep. I got to be a little bit more active about my recovery. So actually feeling my body, what's up with it, what's tweaking, what needs a bit of work, should I have an ice bath? Should I do a bit? So not just like switching off and like getting in front of the TV in like a mashed up position, and then stuffing my face at like 9:30 at night, and then kind of paying the price for it in the morning. Like I just had to realize like that's because I was frustrated as well. I was super frustrated because I felt like I'm still doing the max effort. It's not like I took my foot off the gas. I'm doing max effort like I did for my 13 wins, and my body's falling apart. It felt like it can't do it anymore, and I realized it's not just about blunt force trauma, like smashing yourself against the wall. It's about like making the tweaks. What are the things? Where can I tweak? Where can I get a bit more performance out? Like, be smart about it, because it's not about effort anymore. I'm already doing max effort, and it's detrimental at this point. It's breaking me. So I had to figure out a way to keep that training intensity, but just be. And it was about just being more aware and being more present in my body. It's about not just switching off and being a zombie when I get home. It's about feeling my body. My back doesn't feel right in that position. I'm going to roll it out or something. Whereas I'm sure everyone knows what it's like. You can sit on a couch in the worst position imaginable, and you don't even know until it's time to get up or it's time to train the next morning. And like, I'm putting in max effort, but that's no way to treat yourself like afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's a reoccurring theme, I think, with so many athletes, and people have this real sort of misconception that guys who are training at an elite or even at the top, maybe not so much at the very top levels, but certainly like loads of athletes within the elite levels of their sports, there's this misconception that they're doing everything right, that the training's perfect, the recovery's perfect, the diet's absolutely, just nailing the nutrition. And it's not true at all in so many cases. Like, athletes get to that point because the effects of it, like you said, a lot of the time are chronic. You don't know about it until you've been doing it wrong for ages. You have all these athletes that are at the elite level that have been just doing their nutrition well enough and just recovering enough, and then relying on like genetic natural talent and training hard and absolutely smashing the training, which is always the first port of call for athletes, until they get to that point where they start to have this like unexplainable decline or whatever, like just similar to what you've described, before they then start putting the other pieces of that puzzle into place.
I got away with like training like that for nearly 10 years, and like and literally I was getting away with it, but like I eventually, like you said, so you wouldn't necessarily notice like 1 year or two, but then eventually your body's like, nah, like no more, and you're so used to kind of mind over matter and just and pushing through. So you push through, you get a good score, you get a good spar, and it's like, okay, good, congratulations. Now you're sick. Like, now you're real sick. You're like, oh man. And but yeah, it was a frustrating time. But it was time to kind of use the brain a little bit, as well as just kind of brute kind of willpower and force.
Yeah. And again, this is one of the advantages of having a coach. Like, when you don't have a coach, you don't have somebody to look at those other factors. You don't have somebody to actually ask you about it. How are you sleeping? Oh yeah, I'm sleeping all right, 6 hours or whatever. No. Like, how many times are you waking up in the night? Lots of people wake up multiple times in the night. A lot of the time they don't even know how many times they wake up because they don't remember it. But all of us have the capacity to be able to sleep most of the way through the night, and you don't notice the difference until you start paying a bit more attention to like your bedtime routine, different stimulants you're taking through the day, potentially even as far as things like mouth taping and stuff. And then it's a total game changer, but you're just habituating that stress.
And that all came together, all funny. So the sleep as well, that all came together because it all linked up, because I'd be, to get all my meals in that I needed to, I'd be having my last meal at like 10:30, and I didn't even want it. Like, I didn't even want the, like, I wasn't eating because I was hungry. I was eating because like, I got to get this meal in, and I'd be forcing that in. And then like, you got to drink to get it down. So then I'd be waking up like, I was all inflamed and congested, so my nose would be closed up. So I'd be mouth breathing. I have to drink through the night. So I'd be getting up to pee all the time. And like, my gut's just like trying to digest while I'm lying down. And it's, and I realized as well, like, my sleep was a mess. So that's not gonna, and you realize, like, you reading a few books and you realize, oh yeah, of course you're gonna get sick. Like, you're gonna think like such a massive part of like, how you're going to reduce that inflammation and kind of recover if you're like, I was in bed for like 9-10 hours, but like I'd wake up knackered, and it's obviously you're doing it wrong. But when you just look at, sometimes you just look at these numbers, you're like, well, I'm sleeping long enough, I'm in bed long enough, but you're not. There's sleep and then there's sleep, and you can do that right too. And that was something again that I didn't realize, but had to look into. Even that, like, you can do that better. You can practice at that. You can get better at sleeping. You can do your breathing exercises, clear your nose, sleep, breathe through your nose, not have to drink water, sleep through the night. You're like, oh, I actually feel good. I had 8 hours sleep, and I feel good.
And I think people put those kinds of things into the 1% bracket, like, it's only a 1%. But it's not. It's like a fucking 15% if you improve your sleep, like that much better.
At least it's a huge one, especially even like incorporate the first thing that gave me a hint at it is when we're doing these like hard doubles, and in between the double I would take a nap, and the difference between when I took, like, it was just a 20-minute nap, the difference between when I did and when I didn't, I'd come in the evening and just feel like this feels like cheating. I shouldn't be allowed to do this. And that's when I kind of realized, oh man, like I've got to take this a little bit more seriously.
And that's what opened my eyes to the idea of meditation to start with. You know, I always just wrote off meditation as something that I would never be able to do because I'm so like ADD, you know, like hyperactive. But when I was working at this residential boot camp, just one of the most exhausting jobs that I had would just be running fitness sessions all day, lectures in between, you know, that we would be up at the crack of dawn to do like the clinic for everybody, check they're all okay. It's just a massive full-on day. I'd be eating like nut butters straight out of the jar just to get enough calories in, like to keep going. And one thing I started doing was in between sessions, I only have about like 10 or 15 minutes. I'd just go and lay down, and I'd be like, I'd come back from a 10-minute lie down. I'd be like, I'm so ready to go now. You know, like, and then I'd be like, fuck, I think there's something in this, you know, like meditation and potential napping. Game changer.
Sympathetic nervous systems, and kind of just like allow it.
Exactly. That's it. And, you know, if you're just redlining it all the time. So I want to touch on a little bit more about recovery if you've got time.
Yeah, I got to run in a bit. So
okay.
Get a bit of food, but yeah, let's.
Yeah, sure. So last couple of questions then before I let you go and eat something. I did wonder if you had something to eat because I knew you're coming straight from training. And now we're talking about nutrition. You're getting hungry.
Yeah, right.
But so last couple there. So just. Like probably the most obvious question that I haven't even gone near yet is what does a training week look like for you?
Well, generally, like obviously, like lockdowns have making it a bit tricky, but I'm still trying to get my kind of like 2 in a day. But what generally happens is I'll wake up in the morning, and I'll kind of just do like I like to get out of the house kind of like 8 o'clock-ish, just after 8 o'clock, and I would kind of just go outside and just do a bit of mobilization, kind of, and some bodyweight squats and some stretching. Swing a medicine ball on a rope about, or twice a week. Instead of that, I'll do a run, and then generally I'll go in to train. It's about from 11 till so I'll come in at kind of 9. So do my like kind of light just fun stuff just to move my body, get my metabolism up, and just kind of just get I feel so much better by the time I get to my first actual training if I've already moved my body, and then it's much less stiff and it's kind of like ready to work. It's like kind of like I feel like it's like a warm up for the day. Like my whole day is better if I do that little bit in the morning. So I generally like to do that, and then 11 till 1 will be training, whatever that is. So that'll be like grappling or kickboxing or wrestling or whatever it is on that day. Oftentimes sparring as well. And then there'll be kind of a couple hours break in between where I generally try to get 2 meals in. So I try to eat pretty soon after training, kind of like 1:32ish, kind of get a meal in, and then try to get another meal in around 4. and then train at 5. So generally I have a bigger meal after the first training, and then kind of a smaller meal at 4, so that I'm kind of light and ready to train again by 5. And then again 5 is kind of like more of the same. So either that you start with some technical work, whatever we're working on technique wise. If they're sparring that night, we'll spar that night, or oftentimes there'll be cardio in the evening. And that's generally what the 2-a-days look like. And then on a Wednesday, a Friday, and a Saturday, that will kind of be the single sessions. Wednesday and Fridays are specifically they're specifically sparring sessions generally. So we'll do just kind of like 2 hours of like sparring, and then some grappling at the end. And then we kind of got the evening to do what we want ourselves. So generally, I'll try to get a bit of weights in the evening, or a bit of calisthenics or something explosive. And then on the Saturday, it's kind of conditioning. So either I'll do a 5K run, and then kind of do a bit of shadow boxing and stuff, and maybe go to the park and in the evening, and a bit more like kind of afternoon, and do kind of do some pull-ups and things. Or it will be I'll go into the gym. We'll kind of do like muscular circuits, like muscular endurance circuits. I'm sure you did some while you were at shoot. So we do the kind of muscular endurance circuits. Yeah, and that's generally the training week. But what I found as well is, because I'm putting in so much kind of like you're having to try and get a lot of recovery during the week. Sometimes it's hard to fit in as much strength stuff as I'd like.
Right.
I'm quite how I fight is I'm quite strength based guy. So for me, I find that's important to make sure I'm looking after my power and my explosiveness and my strength. And I find it hard to have a full dedicated session sometimes when I'm training so much. So what I've started doing more often now as well is when I'm doing the double sessions or during the week, after the first session, right afterwards, while I'm still warm, my body's still working, it's still good to go, I won't do a full workout of weights, but I'll smash out a few sets. So I'll pick maybe 2 exercises and do 3 sets of each exercise and do it pretty hard. And I find that's a good way to sneak in work that doesn't tax me as much as a full session. I feel like I'm kind of getting it for free almost. I'm already warm, already working. I find I kind of piggyback it onto the end of the session before. And then by the end of the week, I've managed to get in like 2 full workouts by sneaking in little bits after each session while I'm still warm, where I wouldn't be able to fit in a whole session on one of those days, because then I wouldn't be able to train in the evening. So yeah, that's kind of how it looks.
That's a really interesting approach, actually. That's something I've talked about a lot with clients before who are super busy, and they don't have necessarily that many windows through the week where they can squeeze in like a full 60-minute gym session. And I'm like, you don't have to do it like that. Like, you can break it up. It's not necessarily the optimal way to train. Like, I'm sure you would rather take like 2 or 3 days out of your week to just solely train strength and have the opportunity to just send that signal, just accommodate that stimulus in that one training session. On paper, in scientific terms, like that would be the optimum way to train, but you can't do it. But what you can do is put in those chunks throughout the week, gradually build it up, and then you're also triggering that that neuromuscular pathway as well, because a lot of strength, as you obviously know, is neuromuscular. It's like are you familiar with the grease in the groove?
Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah,
Pavel, So Pavel Tsatsouline, the guy who does the kettlebells, he's talking about this grease in the groove, where you're just performing the movements to consolidate that neuromuscular pathway, and that's ultimately like 50% of your strength. So that's really interesting that you adopted that approach and obviously used it really successfully.
Yeah, we're calling it monkey strength in the gym, because it's kind of like, like the monkeys don't go and do like a solid hour session. It's just all day swinging from trees, doing bits and bobs. And I kind of remember like when I got some really good strength gains was back when I was kind of like 18, 19, and I got a job in a gym, and I was just in the gym all day, and I walked past the bench press, bang out some reps, do some pull-ups. And then by the end of the day, I've been working all day, so I've only had a second here or there to do it. But by the end of the day, I've had like a full workout, and then I'll do another workout. And I was like, oh man, I'm getting mad strong. And it feels like you're getting it feels like you're getting it for free almost, because you're only doing it a little bit at a time. Your body doesn't feel like super exhausted as you would when you do like a full intense session. So you feel like you can also do a session on top. Anyway,
Yeah,
mate,
totally.
I've really got to run, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's no problem at all, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Covered most of my questions, so I think we can let you go and grab your protein shake.
We'll do part 2.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike.
Good to see you, mate.
I'll catch up with you soon. Cheers. Guys and girls, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for watching. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get notified of the next discussions coming up. We've got loads of super interesting guests to come. You can download the Fitter Body, Stronger Mind ebook by visiting theseusbodyandmind.com. And you can check out blogs and articles on high performance and human fortitude there while you are at it. If you're keen to make the jump to peak health and performance, you can also book a call with me to chat about how we could potentially tackle that together, see if we're the right fit for your goals. There are some spaces becoming available now for the TBM exclusive one-to-one online coaching program. So if you fancy it, book that call in with me. We'll have a chit chat. Most importantly, whatever you are doing with the rest of the day today, have an awesome time. Dare to accomplish more, and I will catch you all very soon.